Okay, it's time for your daily dose of history because we need it. Okay, so by now we know the national landscape of whenever a black town is thriving in the US. So what about Chocolate City? Kinda what we fought for.
Okay, so we learned how Chocolate City emerged because of a black bank and a black university amid rampant racism that hated on black people thriving. Then, after 1965, as some immigrant groups started being allowed in the country working to survive with their families, the burgeoning black middle class, bolstered by the efforts of institutions like Industrial Bank and Howard University, have now been allowed into white spaces, and so began to sell their homes and move into Maryland, Virginia, or for the black middle class who stayed in D.C., began looking at previously segregated D.C. private schools like Georgetown Day School, which left the predominantly black, hard-working class of D.C. open to vulnerabilities. What do I mean? You see, the human experience in a racist capitalist setting can get very hard, so folks look for a release. These days, the drug of choice is coffee. Back then, a new one came into the scene. It was marketed as a painkiller and cough suppressant, but quickly became highly addictive. It was called heroin, or Heroine. It emerged in the early 1900s to 1924 and was first synthesized from morphine by a company named Bayer in Germany in 1898, sold and marketed as medicine, specifically a cough suppressant and painkiller, like a sedative for coughs. Quickly, the addictive effects became wide known. It became banned in 1924. They ain't stopped nobody. Even after the 1924 ban, small-scale smuggling occurred often from Europe. By the 1950s, the main source of heroin was from France, using opium from Turkey. This was known as the French Connection, smuggled in by French and Italian organized crime networks and distributed by the U.S. mafias, like all the gangster movies the kids in the hood glorified. Yeah. The French Connection was later dismantled by the late 1970s by the U.S. government, but not to stop it, just to take over the market. Yeah, U.S. veterans of the Vietnam War and CIA-connected operations have been controversially linked to the trade of opium poppies grown in Southeast Asia, which were mixed to make the U.S.-sponsored version of heroin. So this next wave of heroin came from Southeast Asia and also smuggled to international flights in the U.S. By 1965 to the 1970s, the rate of heroin use by young black men ages 14 to 25 tripled. And then it shifted to Latin America, with Colombia beginning to produce white heroin, and then Mexico with black tar heroin. Both snuck it into the U.S. through different states. Many private businesses and individuals were able to take control of the ways heroin got into the U.S., and many U.S. film companies took advantage of that to make more money, specifically by glorifying this trade in film culture with black and Latino youth eating it up. Meanwhile, this trade takes the lives of many black and Latino people on both the U.S., Mexican, and Colombia side. Next up in drugs destroying our community, we had the crack epidemic from the early 1980s to the early 1990s, also connected to our government.
So what did we learn from all this? Well, while heroin wasn't brought by the U.S. government, the version that most impacted black communities seemed to be the one most sponsored by the U.S. government. At least the one they turned a blind eye to on their turn.
Crack era, coming up next.